All right, everyone, it's time to talk some Cowboys coaching updates because Matt Eberflus has been gone for a while now, and we still don't know who will be coaching the Cowboys defense in 2026. We've got some ideas, we've got some updates. That's what we're going to be focusing on today. And I'm also going to be starting off the conversation by pointing out that the biggest news that we have seen so far in the NFL in 2026 might hurt the Cowboys in this specific defensive coordinator search. Now, let me catch you up for those of you who maybe have not been monitoring the Cowboys news very closely over the last few days. We know 9 candidates right now for the Cowboys to replace Matt Eberflus, but there is one name that seems to be emerging as the favorite. Now, when I say that, I don't say that necessarily because we know that the Cowboys are going to be, hiring him because they told us that, or because they have had 2 interviews with him. We only know that because at least one insider, and I'm talking about one of the greats in Cowboys media, and that is Bobby Belt from 105.3 The Fan, has described Jim Leonhard, the Broncos passing game coordinator, as the guy that he thinks will be the Cowboys guy. He even said recently that obviously that would mean that the Cowboys need to wait for the Broncos to be eliminated. But a lot of people seem to think that Jim Leonhard will be the Cowboys guy. There's a problem with it, though. There's a problem with it. And I'll talk about Jim Leonhard all day if you want me to. I love Jim Leonhard. I think he's a great choice to lead the Cowboys defense. He's a guy with 6 years of defensive coordinator experience at Wisconsin. He is someone that has had direct access to Vance Joseph over in Denver, and I consider Vance Joseph one of the greatest defensive minds in the NFL right now. So I like Jim Leonhard. Problem is, and this is where the biggest news of the year so far enters the picture, John Harbaugh does too. And I'm sure you know by now that it turns out John Harbaugh is going to be coaching the freaking New York Giants. And I'm not a fan of having John Harbaugh in the NFC East. I'm not going to lie to you. And when I tell you this, you're not going to like it either. Art Stapleton, a Giants insider, recently said on the radio over at Sirius, and then he reiterated it on his Twitter account, that John Harbaugh, a big name to watch for him as defensive coordinator, is Jim Leonhard. And there's a connection there. Jim Leonhard played for the Ravens in 2008. That's the first year that John Harbaugh was leading the Ravens. And the Cowboys also have a connection to Jim Leonhard because he also played on the Jets when Schottenheimer was coaching for the Jets as offensive coordinator. But I don't like that, I don't like that connection. I don't like that immediate connection to John Harbaugh. I don't like that there's already buzz around his name. I don't like that we heard that Todd Monken was a likely offensive coordinator for Harbaugh, but that we haven't heard the same for his defensive coordinator in 2024, which is Zach Orr, also one of the coaches the Cowboys are interviewing for their opening. So I don't like that in general. Long story short, seems like John Harbaugh is interested in Jim Leonhard. Here's a problem with that as well. I don't think that's a battle the Cowboys are going to win. I don't think the Cowboys are going to win a bidding war with the Giants, who are currently throwing about $20 million per year, according to early reports, for John Harbaugh to be their coach. You think they're not going to match whatever the Cowboys offer is for Leonhard in the open market for if Harbaugh wants him? They're going all in with the Harbaugh hire. They're going to beat you in that bidding war. And again, man, I'm just going to clarify right now. We don't really know if Jim Leonhard is the Cowboys' favorite. Some insiders have speculated that he is. It makes a lot of sense with everything else that we know about the Cowboys search and how they're focusing on younger guys, how they're clearly open to hiring someone with no prior NFL defensive coordinator experience. Again, Leonhard was a DC, but he was for the Wisconsin Badgers. So I don't know, man. I don't know. Not great, in my opinion, that Harbaugh is so immediately tied to Jim Leonard, even though he's technically not allowed to speak to Leonard yet because the Broncos have a game on Saturday versus the Bills. I'm rooting for the Buffalo Bills on that one, just because I want Jim Leonard to be available and we can get this over with. The sooner the Broncos lose, the better for the Cowboys. So if you don't know who to root for on Saturday and you don't have any money on it or anything like that, you should be rooting for the Bills, because the sooner that the Broncos are done in the playoffs, the sooner we get to know what's going to happen with Jim Leonard, and the sooner that we get to know what's going to happen with the Cowboys defensive coordinator opening right now. But anyways, let me pause right there and say hi in the comments. Shout out to Mr. Hood Kush. He says, what's good, A to Z Hoodie in the building. What's up, my man? Thank you for joining the show. We've also got John Jones in the comments over at YouTube. Thank you for joining. We had some interesting comments over on Instagram as well. We've got Southside Double O saying we need to draft Caleb Downs, and we need a corner, and we need a defensive end. Southside, I agree with you 100%. Everything that you said. I would love Caleb Downs. I'm going to be honest with you. I'm not getting my hopes up for Caleb Downs. I fully understand why you would. I fully understand this reasoning of he's a safety. He's going to drop just based on positional value. But I also think NFL front offices are seeing the same thing we're seeing on film. Caleb Downs, he's not only a starting ready player for you at the NFL level. He is literally a first-year-old pro candidate, in my opinion. Like, he can be all pro as a rookie, dude. Caleb Downs is crazy. But hey, shout out to Big Lupus here, who says cornerback from LSU is a better fit. Listen, dude, if the Cowboys take Mansour Delane from LSU at 12th overall, I am all in on Mansour Delane. That guy is legit. You go watch Mansour Delane play Clemson in week 1. That is not film. That is a highlight reel. The entire freaking game is a highlight reel. You will see him freaking sticky man coverage all game long, whether it's a double move route to the outside, whether it's an in-breaking route. Mansour Delane is on top of his receivers. That's number one. Number two, you see him passing off assignments in zone coverage like he's a 10-year NFL veteran. You see him being a willing tackler. You see this dude be smart. Mansour Delane, I'm all in on that guy. If the Cowboys pick him at 12 overall, I am all in on that guy. There was another comment on TikTok. And by the way, if you see me looking at two cameras, that's because we've got TikTok going here on the phone. Tyler had said it's going to be Al Harris or that Aaron White Cotton guy who is the Cowboys defensive line coach. I don't see either. I'm not going to lie to you. Al Harris obviously hasn't even been, interviewed. Part of that is the fact that he's still coaching. I don't see the Cowboys going for Al Harris. I don't see them going for the in-house candidate who is Aaron White Cotton. I understand why I would think so, though. The guy is good, like, as a defensive line coach. And the Cowboys are known for liking their in-house guys. I mean, they just signed Schottenheimer to be head coach last year. So I understand the reasoning behind that. However, I don't see it, man. This search is different. You cannot tell me the search for the Cowboys DC in 2026 is different. And I mean, it's clear as day. You went from, in 2024, man, 2024, the guys that you were hearing for Cowboys DC was, it was Ron Rivera, Rex Ryan, Mike Zimmer. Mike Zimmer got the job, right? Then 1 year later, you heard Matt Eberflus. I don't think we heard any other name then. And then to make matters worse, he was terrible. But now, every single one of the 9 candidates so far the Cowboys are interviewing or have interviewed or are scheduled to interview is under 50 years old. Every single one of them. I think 3 of them are under 30 years old. I mean, it's clear as day, right? The Cowboys, they want a younger coach, it seems like. But also, I think they want someone from the outside. I think Shotty really wants someone from the outside. I wouldn't be very excited about the White Cotton hire. If you want to leave him as defensive line coach, go for it. I honestly want something else. I honestly want someone from the outside to come in, fresh ideas, especially if it's a passing game coordinator. I'm all for that. Someone said in the comments over on TikTok that it's going to be Jim Leonhard. I hope so too. I want it to be Jim Leonhard. The one thing I'm worried about, and that's the thing we let off the show with, it's John Harbaugh over at the Giants. Rumors emerging that he wants Jim Leonhard. We'll see, though. We'll see. It's still very early in the process, so let's give it some time. Alex in Twitter, though, he's asking, what happens? What's happened with Brian Flores? Why have we not heard Brian Flores' name with the Cowboys DC search? I mean, there are some reporters. I think one of them was Josina Anderson, who pointed out that maybe the Cowboys think he's going to be a head coach, and maybe the Cowboys think it's not worth the interview. I'm not entirely sure if that is the case or not, but Brian Flores has gotten at least 2 head coaching interviews. The weird thing about Flores, though, is that he did interview for DC with the Washington Commanders. That's weird on so many levels to me. Number one, it's weird that Dan Quinn is a defensive-minded coach. It would be weird if he brings in Brian Flores and then Brian Flores does not get a chance to kind of lead the defense, or would Dan Quinn give up his control to Brian Flores? Because, I mean, maybe they're alike in some ways. Like, Dan Quinn likes to be aggressive. Brian Flores is obviously as aggressive as it gets in the NFL. But I don't think they're quite the same. And I think if you bring in someone of the caliber of Brian Flores, I'm assuming he wants to run the damn thing, right? So Brian Flores is weird. I don't know why the Cowboys have not requested the interview, though, because he already took one. So I'm not sure what's going on there, but some people have suggested that the Cowboys think Flores is going to be a head coach, which honestly would be pretty fun for NFL fans in general, seeing Brian Flores get another shot at it. Similar thing with Jim Schwartz. Jim Schwartz from the Broncos is actually interviewing for a second time with the Browns. Jim Schwartz might be promoted. That's one of the biggest names that I thought the Cowboys were going to go after. It doesn't seem like they will, though, because they haven't even requested the interview. Big Thody saying in the chat, what about Zach Orr? Zach Orr, dude, I don't know what to make of Zach Orr. My gut reaction to Zach Orr is let's not get Zach Orr in here. The only reason why is the last couple of years have been kind of one of the worst defensively that we've seen from the Ravens in recent memory. Like, Zach Orr was a downgrade from Anthony Weaver and Mike McDonald with the Ravens. And then if Harbaugh goes to the Giants, and I'm just thinking here, speculating, we don't know anything yet. We know Harbaugh is going to coach the Giants. That we know. We can say that confidently. Even though it hasn't been finalized, blah, blah, blah. That's going to happen. What does it say about Zach Orr if Harbaugh goes to the Giants, and this is where the speculation comes into play, he brings Todd Monken with him. He brings a bunch of Baltimore coaches with him, but he doesn't bring Zach Orr. And he interviews, say, Denard Wilson, who has a history with Harbaugh, and maybe he does bring in Jim Leonhard. What does that say about John Harbaugh? About Zach Orr, sorry, if John Harbaugh does not do that. It's crazy that whatever Harbaugh does is so linked to what the Cowboys may do, and then he's on the division, so you have to deal with him. We'll see, man. We'll see. But yeah, I'm not sure about Zach Orr, though. He's 33 years old, so obviously he's someone with upside. He's energetic, which Shoddy seems to be prioritizing based on the search that he's got going on. And there's some good to Zach Orr. I think even though the Ravens were bad over the last couple of years, you can argue that the Ravens were also pretty banged up in 2025. So there's that. Shout out to Katharina, who says, hello, Mo. It's been a long time. Shout out to Katharina. She used to watch A to Z Sports Dallas primetime every single night when we were doing daily live streams. So shout out to her. Appreciate you being here. Rico says it would be good with John, but Jim Leonard, but draft a linebacker, draft a cornerback, and then sign Trey Hendrickson off of free agency. Dude, Trey Hendrickson for the Cowboys is maybe the biggest move that they can realistically make in free agency. I would love that. Chill says, Giants will have the same problems with Harbaugh. No intervening with Monken during crucial play calls. Yeah, man. The thing about the Giants, they have some pieces though. They have some pieces though. Like Harbaugh takes over as head coach, right? That's one. You've got Jackson Dart, who played solid at the minimum, right? He had some impressive moments as a rookie. Then you've got, who else do you have? Malik Neighbors, top tier wide receiver. Abdul Carter really came along in the second portion of the season. There was a lot of hate going on for Abdul Carter early in the year. He finished with very high amount of sacks. I don't remember right now what the number was, but he started producing like crazy on the back end of the year. So they've got themselves a pass rusher. They do have a lot of things to do. I don't expect the Giants to be a contender in 2026. But if suddenly Harbaugh takes over and his offensive coordinator is Todd Monken and his defensive coordinator is Jim Leonard, it's a pretty good staff with a roster that has pretty good pieces. They're going to have a top draft pick. Dude, the Giants could be players, honestly. As soon as 2026, I wouldn't expect them to be a 12-win team out of nowhere, but they're going to be relevant with Harbaugh, I feel like. They're going to be relevant with Harbaugh. John isn't that good of a coach, says Don. Man, I know Harbaugh and Tomlin, they're kind of controversial because they're not like the Kyle Shanahans of the NFL where, they're calling their asses off on game day, play calling their asses off on game day. But I think they're great program builders. I mean, I don't know that you can deny that, honestly. Then again, though, very successful coaches have failed in their second run as head coaches, right? We've seen it over and over and over again. It's maybe one of the most guaranteed things in NFL history. But we'll see. We'll see. Rico says, would you keep the offense the same or would you let them walk? I need a new tackle. If I can get a new tackle, dude, I'm good with the offense. But I also want, and this is where we can get a little bit greedy, I want George Pickens to be around for training camp. I don't want us to do the whole franchise tag and then Pickens doesn't show up until 1 week before September. We already saw how that plays out with CeeDee Lamb and Dak Prescott in 2024. That chemistry was not the same as it was in 2023, especially early in the season. So I don't want to see Pickens show up in September out of nowhere. And I think if you franchise tag Pickens, that's what you're going to get. Pickens is not going to show up to training camp. His agent is the same as Michael Parsons, but people like to make it about the agent. No one in Pickens' situation, regardless of who represents him, is going to show up to training camp if you franchise tag him in that situation specifically, right? The player has to use his leverage. Again, I think people like to make it a lot about David Mulugheta. I think pretty much every one of the agents in the NFL would recommend, hey, don't show up. Hold out. Go for the long-term extension. Because Pickens understands, and his agent understands, his value is at an all-time high. It really is, dude. Especially because he wasn't just the number 2 wide receiver of the Cowboys. He was much more than that. When CeeDee went down, he was a elite number 1. And when CeeDee came back, at times, Pickens was still the number 1. Enrico says, if they attack him, do you think he will show up? No, I don't. No, I don't. With no long-term deal in place, Pickens is not going to show up to training camp. So that would be my only 2 things about the offense. Get an offensive tackle, please, and try to run it back with George Pickens. And ideally, if you're going to bust the budget, as Jerry says, and the whole thing with Jerry in the end of season press conference, after the press conference, he talked to reporters, and you can see the video. It's up on the YouTube channel for the Cowboys. Jerry Jones says, the way Dak Prescott is playing, combined with his age, 83 years old, incentivizes the Cowboys to bust the budget. Now, 2 years ago, he said the Cowboys were going to go all in. They didn't do any of that. So don't buy into it just yet. But if the Cowboys do want to bust the budget, dude, Dak is basically on a 3-year deal. CD is basically on a 3-year deal. Shoddy's basically on a 3-year deal. The Cowboys need to treat the next 3 seasons as kind of like an all-in run. Like, if we don't do it over the next 2 to 3 years, it's not going to happen. That's how they got to treat it. Who cares if you extend George Pickens to a 3-year deal or, like, let's say a 4 or 5-year deal, whatever, but that in reality, when you look at the numbers, it's really like a 3-year deal. Who cares if you do that and then it blows up and then you have to deal with the consequences 3 years from now? How can the Cowboys not agree that if we want to do this in the next 2 to 3 years, having Pickens on the roster is the best way to go about it? Having Pickens and Lamb on the roster. Answer me this. What is likelier, for the Cowboys to fix their defense or for the Cowboys to have an elite offense over the next 2 to 3 years? It's definitely the offense, because you've already got Dak playing at the level that he's playing. So, yeah, dude, I would keep the offense the same. But you need a tackle and you need Pickens in there, I would say. Stevie Mack says, so are we all rooting for the Broncos to lose this week so we can hire Leonard sooner? Hell yeah, I am. At the very least, so I can sleep peacefully knowing what's going to happen with Leonard. Because, again, man, the Giants got me nervous. The Giants and freaking John Harbaugh, they've got me nervous. Anyways, guys, other than that, DC updates, honestly, man, not a lot. Like the 9 candidates that we've known for a while now. Interesting thing about Leonard, one of the candidates the Cowboys are interviewing is Charlie Bullen. Charlie Bullen was the interim defensive coordinator for the Giants in 2025, and he was on the same Illinois staff in 2023 as was Leonard. So some people have already speculated, and myself included, like, are you interviewing Charlie Bullen out of nowhere to be DC? Or are you maybe picking the brain of someone who might be a staffer for Jim Leonard? Because that could be the case as well. That could be the case as well. And I mean that as no disrespect to Charlie Bullen, but compared to some of the names on the Cowboys interview list, I'm not sure that he's the biggest one. I would say not. It would make sense that Bullen is kind of like a sign that the Cowboys are really interested in Jim Leonard. But again, dude, some noise surrounding the Giants, Harbaugh, and Leonard. I don't like it at all. We'll see what happens. For now, though, I will let you go about your Friday. Thank you for tuning in. Do me a favor, hit the like button if you're watching on Instagram, if you're watching on YouTube, Facebook, TikTok, wherever you're watching, drop a like. Thank you for following A to Z Sports Dallas. By the way, we'll have you covered with updates at atozsports.com/Dallas. Make sure you check that out. We've got content across the entire NFL, but we've got you covered with the Cowboys content as well. Thanks so much, guys. Appreciate you, and I'll see you next week. Enjoy the divisional round of the playoffs and the national championship. What a time to be alive. Thank you, guys.